we'll move on to Form C. Now if you get chosen to do the fuel area and back, do not stop at the coupling system. Go ahead and continue to move on. What you do is you'll come out of the vehicle and you'll start with your cables and hoses, making sure that they're properly mounted secure, they're not broke, loose, missing, all the hardware is present. Both my service line and my emergency line for my tractor, air lines, they're not dry rotted or cracked. There's no leaks on it. The electrical connection is not cut, damaged, or exposed. There's no exposed wire, excess electrical tape, and I do have proper clearance. And where they dangle, they're not dragging that'll cause rubbing and damage later. I'm going to make sure that they are properly connected to both sides of the tractor and trailer. I'm going to move to the glad hands. I'm going to check the glad hands, making sure that they are properly mounted secure. They're not broke, loose, or missing. All hardware is present. I'm going to make sure that there's rubber grommets in between those glad hands and make sure they're not dry rotted or cracked. They're properly mounted secure. They're not broke, loose, or missing, and there is no air leaks coming from them. Everything's in good working condition. I'm going to make sure that the electrical connection on both ends is also properly mounted secure, properly connected to the trailer in good working condition. It's not broken or damaged in any way. I'll go ahead and step back and start talking about the trailer itself, mentioning the bulkhead or the front of the trailer. I'm going to make sure it's properly mounted secure, it's not broke, loose, or missing, all hardware is present, it's not cracked or broken or damaged in any way. There's no broken rivets, everything's looking good. I'll check on top of the trailer, making sure that there's 2 clearance lights up on top. Both those clearance lights are amber in color, they're properly mounted secure, they're not broke, loose, or missing, all the hardware is present, and they're in good working condition. Those serve as my clearance lights. You got to mention that they serve as your clearance lights. Next, we'll go ahead and move to the side of the trailer. Make sure that the side of my trailer is properly mounted secure. It's not broke, loose, or missing. All hardware is present. There's no broken rivets or any kind of damage on the side of the trailer. It's in good working condition. I'm going to make sure I have DOT electrical tape that runs the length of the vehicle, and it is also properly mounted secure. It's not cut, ripped, or torn. It's not damaged or missing. It's in good working condition. Now I do have 2 amber lights, one in the front here, one in the middle, and then there's a red light in the back. Those are my marker lights. I'm going to make sure that they are properly mounted secure. They're not broke, loose, or missing. All hardware is present. They're not cracked or broken or damaged in any way. They're in good working condition. Now we'll go ahead and look under and making sure that all the cross members that run the length of the vehicle are all properly mounted secure. They're not broke, loose, or missing. All hardware is present. They're not cracked or broken or damaged in any way. And we'll move to our landing gear, making sure that the landing gear and the sand shoes are all properly mounted secure. They're not broke, loose, or missing. All the hardware is present. They're not cracked or broken or damaged in any way. They're in good working condition. If I have the crank handle on this side, I'll go ahead and check it on this side, but I don't, so I'll mention that I'll check the crank handle once I get on that side. Okay, so now that we're at the 3rd axle, I have 3 axles on this vehicle. You're going to go ahead and explain to him how you want to check this. You can either go through each and every individual part like on the 2nd axle, or you can give him a blanket statement. I'm going to go ahead and give you a blanket statement. I'm going to go ahead and check this axle like I checked the last axle, and I'm going to only show you the differences. One of the first differences I have is that my suspension is welded onto the frame. So I'm going to make sure it's properly mounted secure, not broke, loose, missing, all hardware is present. I'm going to check my control arms, making sure that, or torque arms, making sure that they're properly mounted secure, they're not broke, loose, or missing, all hardware is present, they're not cracked or broken or damaged in any way. Now the rest of this, I will explain to him what I'm going to check like the other axle. So I'm going to get into it. I'm going to check my brake hoses, brake chamber, with C-clamp, push rod and slack adjuster, make sure I have no more than 2 inches of play. I'm going to check my brake drum and brake lining, and everything about the suspension and tires, rims, just like I checked the 2nd axle, right? And I did forget to mention over there in that axle that I'm going to make sure that the tires are not rubbing. There's nothing in between the tires, boulders or anything that's going to cause any rubbing between the 2 tires, and the rims do have to be touching. But I will check my rims and tires just like I checked the last axle, including the lug nuts. I'll check them like that last axle. But I also have another difference here, which is my oil hub. Over there I have an axle seal. Over here I have an oil hub. I'm going to make sure that I check my oil hub like the 1st axle. Everything else about this tire, I'm going to check it like I did on the last axle. Air pressure, 2/32 of tread, and everything else about it. Now back here, I'm going to go ahead and move on to checking all my lights in the back. Making sure that they are all properly mounted and secure. They're not broke, loose, or missing. All hardware is present. They're not cracked or broken or damaged in any way. They are all red in color. The 3 on top serve as my clearance lights. I also have 4 bigger red lights down here on the bottom, and they serve as my brake lights, my 4-way flashers, my left and right indicators, and my running lights. I'm going to move on to check my DOT bar, making sure it is properly mounted secure. It's not broke, loose, or missing. All hardware is present. It's not cracked or broken or damaged in any way. There's no broken welds. It's in good working condition. I do have some DOT tape back here, and it is all properly mounted secure. It's not ripped or torn or cracked or broken, loose, or missing. It's in good working condition. I do have a license plate light. It is properly mounted secure. It's not broke, loose, or missing. All hardware is present. It is in good working condition. I'll go ahead and move on to my mud flaps. I'm going to make sure that my mud flaps or splash guards are properly mounted secure. They're not broke, loose, or missing. All hardware is present. They are as wide as my dual tires. I do have more than 2 inches of clearance from the ground, and then they're not dry rotted, cracked, broken, loose, or missing. Now I'm going to move to my doors, making sure that my doors are all properly mounted secure. They're not broke, loose, or missing. All hardware is present. The hinges are all properly mounted secure. They're not broke, loose, or missing. They're not damaged in any way. All the hardware is present on those. I do have a weather seal, which is also properly mounted secure. It's not broke, loose, or missing. All hardware is present. I'm going to make sure that it's not dry, rotted, or cracked. My door does open and close freely. Next, I'm going to check the tie rod, my door tie, and my door latch, making sure that they are all properly mounted secure. They're not broke, loose, or missing. All hardware is present. They're not cracked or broken or damaged in any way. All right, once we get to this side of the vehicle, we're going to go ahead and give them a blanket statement and tell them that you're going to check this side of the vehicle like you're going to check that side of the vehicle, only noting some differences. And we'll move on so I can show you the differences. Now here's one of the first differences. This is my crank handle. I'm going to make sure it is properly mounted secure. It is not broke, loose, or missing. All the hardware is present. It does raise and lower my landing gear properly, and it is in the stowed position. Now, if you ended up doing Form B or C, most likely you didn't inspect the exhaust. So if you got Form C, when you come around and you never inspected the exhaust, you're going to go ahead and inspect it again here. And the way you would do it is most likely the hood will be closed. You're just going to point to and touch and follow it all the way back. So I'm going to check my exhaust starting from my turbo, follow it all the way back, all the way up top, making sure it's properly mounted secure. It's not broken, loose, or missing. All hardware is present. It is not cracked or broken or damaged in any way. All the C-clamps are also properly mounted and secure. They're not broken or damaged, or the mounting brackets. Everything's in good working condition. I have no signs of black smoke or black soot or black markings that would indicate I have a cracked or broken or leaking exhaust. The only place I should have black smoke is at the tip of the pipe. I'm going to go ahead and check the heat shield, making sure it is properly mounted secure. It is not broke, loose, missing. All hardware is present. It is not cracked or broken or damaged in any way. It is in good working condition. Now this is the pre-trip inspection on the outside. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below, leave them in the comments. So we are CDL Basic Training, SoCalCDLSchool.com, and this is our channel, CDL Basics, the basics of CDL driving. Give us a thumbs up.